Well, that happened.
Well done. Looks like you were a good student.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Howie Talks. My name is Howie, and this week we're going to sit down and talk about the latest and final episode of the Ahsoka series, The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord. Of course, we're going to be talking about spoilers in this show, so if you have not sat down and watched that final episode of Ahsoka, I do recommend you go back and watch that and enjoy that before coming back and watching this. Now, with that said, let's jump into it. Anybody else get Empire Strikes Back vibes from the ending of this episode? They just not feel good feeling? Yeah, me too. Did not feel great about this episode from an emotional perspective. Like, some things were resolved, lots of other things were not resolved, but it didn't feel like, emotionally, I didn't feel good. And the more I sit with it, the more I'm okay with it. And that's because the show accomplished a couple of things. It set out to tell the story it told. We got some of our heroes home, some of our heroes not home. But the big thing that it accomplished is it left us wanting more. And that's really what a show like this is designed to do. It's designed to leave us with more questions, wanting to know more about this show and about the series, and wanting to know what's going to happen next. And I think in that regard, they did a masterful job. They have told a very, very good story and a very complete story and left it open for much more story to be told, and I think that is fantastic. And that's what I want. I want more story. I hope we get it in a season 2 of Ahsoka, or some other type of show that extends the story. I would prefer it to have its own show, but if I can't have it have its own show, I would love to have it resolved in other places and in other ways, because there's so much there that they can do with it, and I hope that they take advantage of the stuff that they've set out. This whole idea of Ahsoka and Sabine and Baylan and Shinhati in this world where we saw Baylan Skoll standing on a statue of the father of Mortis, which, I mean, that alone was mind-boggling, and what? There was so much cool stuff there, and we'll dive into that stuff as we go along throughout the rest of the show here. If you were to give this series like a subtitle, or like what's the main point of this show, to be perfectly honest, I would probably say it's something like healing emotional trauma and learning who you are as a person. Like, I feel like almost a psychologist wrote this series because of all the emotional trauma and healing that happens in this series. If you look at what happened with Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds when she was underwater, she healed from that trauma of what happened with Anakin and becoming Darth Vader. You see Sabine healing from that trauma of feeling like she can't be both a Mandalorian and a Jedi. She has to be one or the other. She can't be herself in this role as a Jedi and a Mandalorian. She can't do it. All of these things are things that came up, but were also things that were kind of resolved or healed on an emotional level for the characters. And I thought that was really, really well done, and some really, really well told stories. We see that with Sabine and how she really comes into her own using the lightsaber, the blaster, the Force, all at the same time, especially at that last battle where she's got her helmet off, she's got the lightsaber in one hand, she's got a blaster in another hand, and she is just taking stormtroopers out, and it is fantastic. We also see her really take those two worlds and merge them together. So she's taken those two worlds of being a Jedi and being a Mandalorian, realizing that she can be both and merging them together into one. And I think that's going to make her a much stronger person going forward, in a much better position going forward, especially with what I think is coming next. One thing I wish they would have done better in the show is showing off Sabine and her art. Yes, we saw the art that she had in the communication tower in Lothal, and we saw what her armor looked like, but we didn't actually see Sabine doing any art herself. And I think that would have been really, really cool. We saw that a couple of times in the Rebels series, and I think that's a very, very important part of the character. A great way that she processes emotions, processes feelings, and I think it would have been really, really neat to see some of that in this show. Maybe in the next season they'll have some shots of, I don't know, maybe Sabine like coloring in a journal or something of that nature, kind of processing these feelings that she's having for loss and home and all that kind of stuff. maybe. We'll see. I think it'd be really, really neat. I think it'd be a cool narrative device to really help add more depth to her character going into whatever we have coming next. Because we see a lot of warriors in Star Wars. Obviously, Star Wars, warrior, that kind of stuff. But we don't see a lot of humanity. We don't see a lot of the artistic and expressive side of people. And I think we saw more of that in Ahsoka than we have in other places. But I think we need to see more of that from Sabine. I think Sabine is such a unique character and put in such a place to tell a really unique story that I think she absolutely needs to get that time to do it. We got to see also in this episode, we got to see Ezra make his new lightsaber and have probably one of the most touching scenes in the entire series when he's talking with Hu Yang and Hu Yang's telling him about Kanan's lightsaber and how he kept a spare part for Kanan just in case he lost his lightsaber or something like that.
Kanan Jarrus.
Is that so?
Yeah. He was my master. Taught me everything I know.
And I taught him how to build a lightsaber.
That's it.
I had 2 of those. Kanan took the one, the other I held onto in case he ever needed it. It is proper that you should have it.
And the fact that he then gave it to Ezra, I think it was such a beautiful moment. I loved it. And Hu Yang in general I thought was a great character, but Ezra was a great character too. And getting a chance for him to go and build his own lightsaber and, be the Force monk who can stop other people and stuff like that probably isn't quite good enough to stop bullets yet. Stop blaster bolts yet in the Star Wars vernacular. But being able to go and make his own lightsaber and block blaster bolts and stuff like that, I thought was great. And the scene, just the interaction between the two of them was fantastic. I also loved Hu Yang telling Ezra why Ahsoka and Sabine fell apart. And I think that's one theory that I had from back in the very first episode about why they fell apart. And I think I got that one right. Ahsoka was worried about what Sabine would become if she continued her training after the bombing of her planet, after the Night of 1,000 Tears, the bombing of Mandalore. And so I in that regard, I'll take the point on that one. I'll take my hat, take the ding, gold star for me. We also got to see in this episode Ezra do what Ezra does best, which is steal stormtrooper helmets. I mean, at the very end of that episode when he comes down the gangplank and he's all covered in the armor, which kind of weird that he stayed in the armor for as long as he did, but I think they were trying to make a cool moment with Chopper. But he came down and he took the helmet off and you're like, classic Ezra, steal the stormtrooper armor. Classic. I do wonder, now that we have these kind of teams flip-flopped, what's going to happen? How does that affect the future of the galaxy? Obviously, we've got Thrawn coming in which is going to impact the galaxy hugely, and how he's going to go and try and reunify the Empire and try and make it drive at, Coruscant and all that kind of stuff. The New Republic has lost one of its most powerful warriors in Ahsoka. It's gained Ezra, but between Ahsoka and Ezra, I would say Ahsoka has more force capabilities and more fighting capabilities, but they get Ezra instead. So I'm curious how that is going to play out into the future here. I hope we get some more time with Ezra and Sabine and Chopper and Jason and maybe some Zeb cameos and stuff like that. I think would be absolutely fantastic. The other thing that I think we've seen both in episode 7 and 8 is Ahsoka has really come into her own as her master Jedi phase. I mean, people make the joke of Ahsoka the White, but I think it's quite literally what's happened here. Ahsoka was more or less kind of baptized when she went into the water, came out of the water as a new person. Instead of Ahsoka the Gray, she was now Ahsoka the White. She has made much more peace with the Force. She has made much more peace with life around her. She has committed wholeheartedly to the training of Sabine, as we saw in those moments where they were talking on top of the ship. She's committed to bringing Sabine into being a full Force user. The fact that she says towards the end there that we are where we're supposed to be.
Ezra is where he needs to be. And so are we.
Tells us that Ahsoka is very much so in a go with the flow, I'm trusting the Force, putting us where we're supposed to be to handle something that's here. It again shows that sign of maturity, that sign of growth. She has learned that she is not in control, but she is part of the will of the Force, and she will listen to the Force and what the Force tells her to do. And I think that's going to make for a really big standoff with her and Shin Hati and her and Baylan Skoll at some point in the future, and maybe what Baylan Skoll is trying to unleash. I think she's in a great spot to become this teacher of Sabine and to really become champion of the light and step into that daughter role that she kind of inherited from the daughter of Mortis, which if you've not seen Clone Wars, there's a whole arc where the Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka meet up with these Force gods on this planet called Mortis, and they're quite literally, they are the embodiment of the dark side, the light side, and then the father balances the Force. The son is the dark side, the daughter is the light side, the father is the balance between them. Towards the end of the episode, and this is where we're going to get into kind of my conjecture of what happens next, towards the end of the episode, we have Baylan Skoll standing on a statue carved out of a cliff face of the Mortis father. Next to him is a statue of the Mortis son, also carved out of the cliff face. And then on the other side of the father is what we think is the Mortis daughter, but her head is missing. So, I mean, we can definitely tell that there's a statue there, but her head is missing. So whatever happens next is going to be dealing with the Mortis gods and the real origins and powers of the Force. My guess is telling me that Baylan is trying to set himself up in the father role, the balance between the light side and the dark side. And I think what he wants to do is he wants to destroy the light side and the dark side of the Force, because that is where the conflict came from. In his brain, the light side, the dark side, they are the reason that there is conflict and death and destruction in the galaxy. And in his brain, if he can destroy the Force, or at least destroy the light side versus dark side Force, then all conflict will go away, or most of the conflict will go away. And maybe he sees it as a thing of, if he can become this father figure, he can become the embodiment of the Force and control both the light and the dark side at the same time. We've heard this story before. In the Legends lore, there was a character who was a servant to the Mortis gods who was mortal and was dying, and she, through actions, basically became bathed in both the physical embodiment of the light side of the Force and the physical embodiment of the dark side of the Force, and kind of was driven insane and became this kind of aberration of the Force. She is known as Aboleth, and there has been speculation and rumor that maybe she's the thing that is calling out to Baylan Skoll. I think, to be perfectly frank, I think Baylan Skoll is going to become this Aboleth type figure, where he is going to try and become the embodiment of the Force, and in the process it is going to mutate him and change him and basically drive him insane, and he's going to become this super powerful, super evil guy. And I think in that process, we're going to see Ahsoka take on the role of the father, become the balance between the light side and the dark side, and then we're going to have Shin Hati be the son, and I conjecture Sabine is going to end up becoming the embodiment of the daughter. Now, I could be wrong in all of this stuff. I'm spitballing here about what this could or could not mean. It could be something completely different. We won't know until they tell us. We can conjecture all we want, though, and that's when you know you've told a good story, is when people are asking questions and conjecturing more about it. That's when you know you've told a good story. I think that's the best part of this. Well, friends, that is really all I have to say at this point. Overall, I really, really enjoyed the Ahsoka series, and I'm left wanting more. We have characters left in such a cliffhanger position. We have Thrawn coming back to the galaxy, all these things. I'm wanting more. And I know we're going to get more with Thrawn. I'm guaranteed of that. With where, if we get a second season, the Book of Boba Fett was at, where the Mandalorian was at, we're going to hear more about Thrawn and his story as it becomes a bigger and bigger thing here. I do wonder if we're going to get a Rangers in the New Republic show still. I know Gina Carano was supposed to be in charge of that. Gina Carano shot herself in the foot. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think she had the acting chops to hold a show on her own anyways. I think she'd need somebody else. I hope we get someone like Carson, the actor playing Carson Teva. I would love to have his character become kind of the lead of this Rangers of the New Republic show. I think that would be fantastic, and I think it'd tell a great story. But, so I know we're going to get more with Thrawn. We have stories in the galaxy far, far away that we already know are going to be told. This Peridia, this galaxy far, far, far away, I'm really curious about, and I don't know how they're going to tell that story. I hope we get to see it on screen. I hope they don't do something like put it in a book. But with the death of Ray Stevenson, that may very well be what they do. They put it in a book or a comic book or something like that, which, I mean, I'll get them, I'll read them, I'll watch them, because I'm so interested in the story and what happens next. I think this is what's happening on Peridia is the more interesting story right now, because it has universal implications all around. So overall, I really liked this show, and I want more. I really want more. So I hope we get some more. Anyways, guys, those are my thoughts. I hope that you guys enjoyed the Ahsoka show as much as I did. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Would love to know your thoughts and where you think I may be wrong, what your theories are going forward. Let me know in the comments, and let's go from there. Again, my name is Howie. Have a great rest of the day. I'll talk to you later.